Well, hello friends. Welcome to the SerenityOS update for June 2023. Before we start, let me just note that the Ladybird related updates have moved to a separate video, and that one was published yesterday, and you can find it here on the YouTube channel. Now, about June, this month has been a little bit less active than usual. If you watched the Ladybird video, you'll know why. But we've still had around 900 commits, I think, going into the master branch, and they were spread across about 450 pull requests. So still plenty of activity. And of course, there's a lot of neat stuff that we want to look at. So let's get started. So here we are on the June edition of the SerenityOS desktop. And I thought we could start today by looking at some ports. Because I don't usually start with stuff like that. So the first one is a port called cbonsai, which renders a bonsai tree in the terminal. I was not familiar with this program, but it was ported by Beckett, who also goes by Taro Boba, I think. And I guess we need to look at the options to see what you can do with cbonsai. It seems to have a live view, which might be cool. Oh, look at that. It's growing a bonsai tree in real time in my terminal. Or, I don't suppose this is how fast it grows in real time, but that is pretty cute. And it has infinite mode, so you can actually keep growing trees. So what does that mean? It means I can get more trees. That's really nice. And actually, it seems like if I press more than once within the same second, it generates the same tree. So I wonder if they do srand time null, which would be a little bit silly if they did, like resetting the random number generator like that. But it's a mistake I've made myself, which is why that's what I immediately suspect. Anyway, thank you, Beckett, for porting cbonsai to SerenityOS. And another port that's also new this month is lynx. So while we are working on our own Ladybird browser, of course, we are also welcome for other browsers to exist on SerenityOS. And lynx might be the oldest browser still in development. Not sure, but it's a text-only browser, so let's go to serenityos.org, I suppose. And, oh, wait, shoot, I have to. It has some SSL error. But yeah, it actually lets you browse the web in the terminal. So I wonder, how do I go to another URL? I'm not sure. I used to use lynx long time ago, like 15 years ago or something like that. But it's been a while. Let's go to Google and see if we can find something on the internet. Okay. Yeah, I remember this. You have to manually approve cookies. Seems like we have some kind of terminal emulation bug here. Like text is a little duplicated. Might be something worth investigating. Okay, so what are we going to search for? We are going to search for the cutest stories about animals. All right, let's do it. The most adorable animal stories in 2022. Can we get there? We can. All right, the whale who was a spy. All right. That is perhaps enough browsing with lynx. But yeah, so now we have lynx. That is kick-ass. This was ported by Renee. So thank you, Renee, for porting lynx to SerenityOS. Okay. Now, let me show you something using our own browser that I forgot to mention in the Ladybird video yesterday. But because it's not strictly part of the browser, it's more like part of the system. We now have a new anti-aliasing rasterizer. So I think this is implemented by mkdir, and it is an implementation of edge flag rasterizer, I think it's called. I have the paper for the algorithm here, which I will, of course, open in our PDF viewer, which it can handle, which is pretty sweet as well. Shoutouts to the people working on libpdf. Yeah, so it's an implementation of the scanline edge flag algorithm for anti-aliasing, and it looks really good compared to the way that it used to look. There's a little bit of a glitch sometimes when you resize the window, but that's unrelated to the rasterizer. So if you recall, if you've been watching my update videos, you probably heard me mention that our anti-aliasing is ugly. Well, it's not ugly anymore because mkdir went and made it beautiful. Not just fills, but also strokes. And I'm zooming in here and it's just looking better and better. So big thanks to mkdir for finally making our anti-aliasing look beautiful. Really, really awesome. And it has... it's noticeable all over the web because there's so many SVGs on the web these days and they suddenly look real good in Ladybird. Okay, let me look at some random GUI stuff. So I know that this month Sam did a bunch of random things with GUI, the GUI library. So what's a good app for this? Like ThemeEditor, for example. And ThemeEditor, I think he added a status bar and also recently opened files, which it didn't have before. So if we open some theme here from our theme directory, can I resize this window? It seems like I can't. So this resize thing here might be a little bit misleading. Okay, there's our first bug of the day. Also, these fellas are missing some vertical pixels. Finding more issues here. But yeah, recent files. And now when you hover something in the recent files menu, you'll notice down here in the status bar, it says open path. And previously the suggestion in the status field was just the path, but now it says open. And it's a little detail, but it's consistent with all the other status bar, what do we call them? Status bar action texts. And it's just like this little polish detail, but I just love that we have people in the project that care about these little details. So that is awesome. And thank you, Sam, for continuing to care about these kind of details and improving our GUI library and our GUI applications. I know that ThemeEditor was just one of many apps that Sam was doing this to. Like HexEditor now has a status bar as well, and you can find status bars in many applications. Okay, some other stuff. Let's look at, ooh, this one is exciting actually, and we have a new image encoder. So historically, I think we've had a PNG encoder and a BMP encoder somebody added at some point. But we now also have a JPEG encoder. So we can use the fairly recent image tool to take an image. So I'll take like a cool wallpaper like Irithil from Dark Souls 3, and I can turn that into a JPEG. I'll call it ds3.jpg, and it will just convert that to a JPEG, and we can see here that it actually loads and looks nice. And if we zoom in, we can see those nice JPEG artifacts. And actually, that makes me wonder if they are there in the original. I guess we can find out. No, look, see, they're not in the original. So we have our very own JPEG artifact generator. Yeah, this was implemented by Lucas, who has been doing tons of work on the JPEG decoder. He now took the shareable parts of the decoder and added all the necessary bits to also give us an encoder, which is super awesome. And I think we might want to add some way to influence the quality of the encoding, but this is really kick-ass. I'm super happy that our graphics codec library is actually starting to learn how to encode stuff, not just decode. So thank you, Lucas, for your awesome work on JPEG and image decoding and encoding and everything else that you do. All right, so then, something that you can't see, but you can feel when you're using the system is we've switched to NVMe by default. So previously we've been using like, I guess like a classic IDE or SATA disk emulation, really old school disks, and using that emulation in QEMU. And earlier this month, Jelle went and switched us so that we use NVMe emulation by default. And as it turns out, it's a lot faster, and both reading and writing improves significantly, and it just works. And it's really easy to forget that it used to be slower, but just turning that on made it faster. But of course, we didn't used to support NVMe, so I have to say thank you to Pankaj, who did a lot of great work on NVMe support in our kernel, and everybody else who contributed to that as well. Also in the kernel, I saw that, who was that? I think it was Pierre, who did a change where for TCP sockets, where if we initiate a socket shutdown on our side of a TCP connection, we now send FIN-ACK instead of just FIN. And that should be consistent with the way other systems operate. I think we were previously doing it in a weird way that made other computers confused about what we were telling them. So that is really nice. I know that Pierre has been looking into our TCP implementation recently and is looking to fix various issues and improve correctness, performance, and that's really nice. TCP is definitely one of those areas of the system that needs more love. So those were some kernel things. And final detail I wanted to check out was that I saw that Sam made a change to the directory view that we have here in FileManager, because you can toggle which columns are visible. So I can say like, oh, I want to see the inode number, for example. Isn't that nice? So you can see that DS3 is inode number 1232. And if I shut down FileManager and open it again, it should remember that this column is visible, and it does. Isn't that nice? Again, one of those little details that matters so much, because if you want this to be visible, it would be really annoying if it weren't. So thank you, Sam, for fixing that. And to everybody else who worked on little polish details and just continuing to improve the system. Now we are going to visit Linus, who's going to tell us about all the command line utilities that have been improving this month.
Alrighty, I'm going to show you all the stuff that is new in our userland utilities, which is a whole lot, so let's get right into it. First of all, we have a new utility, which is called aconv, standing for audio conversion, and that's something that Linus Groh added, new this month. So they have been working on a bunch of audio-related stuff, so this seems kind of a good addition to make use of those audio things. For example, the flag encoder, or I think flag decoder and the WAV encoder. And what it can do is convert between those formats. So this takes a while, so I've already run it. But if we look at the file here, which is a flag, I for input, so file test.flag, it's a random thing I downloaded from the internet, 39 seconds, and then it converted that to a WAV using this specified audio format. And so if we say file test.wav, it tells us it's a WAV audio and also 39 seconds. So this got converted fully. And that's really cool, because you don't have to, learn syntax of FFmpeg, for example, but you can just say input file, output file, done. So thanks to Linus Groh for adding that. Then we have a whole bunch of stuff from Tim Ledbetter, who has been working all over the place in the userland utilities this month, making lots of great additions. So let's start with a simple one, which is change group, so chgrp. Now supports multiple file paths. So if we make a file, touch A and B, two empty files, and so if we list those, they're currently owned by anon in the users group. And so if we change group, we can now say, oh, which groups do we even have? Groups. For example, we have the window group. So we can say change group window AB. And then if we list those again, they got both changed. So that was added by Tim, as most of these changes I will demo today are. Next up, we have a bunch of small utilities that now support continuing when an error occurs. So previously, if you pass multiple files and one of them doesn't succeed, we would just stop, and now we continue. So for example, change chmod, change mode, I think it's that, plus X. So we now have these files A and B. But what if in between we pass a file that doesn't exist, for example, foo? So if we do this, we get an error for foo, but it still does that operation on A and B, even though foo was in the middle and didn't succeed. So these are now executable, but the return code is still 1, so you can still see if it succeeded or not. And that now works for chmod, change ownership, and the strings utility, and I believe touch itself, if that failed for some reason. Then we have some changes in the cut utility. So one of them is the -s option to suppress lines that don't have the specified cut delimiter, for example. Cut, how does this work again? I think it's -d for delimiter. Let's use a comma, -f1, and then we have a file called lynx. So that's how it works usually. Let's just look at lynx. Right, so this is just comma separated, and then it cuts from the comma and takes the first column. So if we specify -s, it skips the one where it didn't find the comma, which is really neat if you want that. And another one is, right, it now prints the entire line. So previously it wouldn't even do that. So I think the previous behavior was to do this without the option. And to be closer to POSIX and other systems, we now do this by default, but provide an option for this. So that's what you can do with cut. Then some changes in DD. Which now outputs the write speed, I believe. So if we, for example, say dd input file, let's say /res wallpaper, let's take the sunset one, and we write that to def null. And then at the very end, it tells you it took 99 milliseconds to do that, which is an average of 8 point something megabytes per second. And this also works if we interrupt the thing while it's still in progress. So if we, for example, read from def0 and write to def null, so this would never succeed, right? Or never complete, because there's a never-ending stream of zeros. So if we run this for a while and then Control-C it, it still tells us at the end, this ran for this long, and on average, it copied 20 megabytes per second. So that's really neat, and was not added by Tim. This was added by Carol, so thank you for that. The next one's from Tim again. So you know dirname, which receives any path, doesn't even need to exist. So for example, /foo/bar, and this will tell you the directory name of this path. This now also supports multiple ones. So it just lists those. And it also gained a new option, which is called -z, which will, instead of adding a new line after each directory, it will add a null terminator. So you can't see this because obviously that's not printable, but some scripts might pass it that way. Yeah, also added by Tim. Then one thing I find really neat is in env, we now have a -u option to unset variables. So for example, if you have an environment set up with various variables, but you want to run a certain command without one of those variables, you can just unset them. So for example, if we export test is 1, 2, 3, now we have test in the environment. And if we now say env test, so this runs a shell with this command and inherits the environment, which is here in full. So it does know what test is. But if we do the same and say -u test, it has no idea because we just got rid of the test variable. So that's really neat. Was added by Tim. Then we have a change in groupadd, which adds a new group, obviously, but it also supports adding that group to a new user right away now. So groupadd foo, for example. I need sudo for that. Password is foo. So this now added a new group foo. But if we look at our groups, it's not in here. So if we add a new group called bar and then pass a user, not sure if this order matters, which is anon, password foo, groups, it added that group right away to our user, which is useful. Then you have to only add one command. Next up, we have a change in image, which is similar to aconv. It converts image formats. This one. And that now supports JPEG output, because I believe Lucas has been working on a JPEG encoder. So if we take an input file, oh no, I think this one works differently. So this one just takes a -output file, test.jpg, and -input. Let's use the wallpaper again. Res wallpapers retro. So this is a PNG file. And it now writes it to a JPEG. That's not a, oh, it's not -i. It's just a file. Takes a moment. And then we have image viewer test.jpg. And that totally worked. So this is now a JPEG file, as you can see from the somewhat weird looking artifact when I zoom in. So that's really cool. Image gaining more support for more formats. And another thing in image that is new is that we can now strip alpha pixels or the alpha channel from an image. So for example, we have in /res apps, no, not this one, icons 32 app. Let's use the browser one. I like the old icon. This one has an alpha channel and some transparent pixels. Now, if we use image -o test.png, because PNG still supports alpha, so if we use JPEG, it would do that regardless, because it doesn't support an alpha channel. And then we pass that file name res icons 32 app browser. This one. Nope, that didn't pass the flag. So if we now say -- strip alpha, we get black background instead. I'm not sure why you would use that, because most of the time it's not really something you would need, but it's possible now. And that was added by Nico, so thank you for that, Nico. Back to changes from Tim, we have more. So, for example, in mkdir, it now supports a -v flag, which will tell you which directories it created. So we can say d1, d2, and then create silently two directories. But if we wanted to know which one it created, we can ask it to tell us. It's just a small little helpful thing if you're debugging something, for example. Next up, in pgrep, we have a whole bunch of changes. Pgrep and pkill especially. And those are really useful, I find. So let's take a look. Need more terminals. We'll put one here. So if we say we spawn a JS shell, and then we say pgrep JS, it tells us the PID of those both processes. Now we can filter. Say we only want the oldest one, which was the one on the left. It tells us it's this one. And we only want the newest one. It tells us it's this one. So if you have a bunch of processes of the same name running, and you only want, for example, the latest one that you spawned, you can use this option. And likewise, this also works for pkill. So if I just want to kill the right one, I say pkill-n for new JS. And this one goes away. And then if I spawn this again, and then I want to kill the old one, which is this one, I say pkill-o, make it visible, and it goes away, and this one is still alive. So some really neat filtering options here. Also supports -u for the login name, so that would be anon. If I start one again, no, not sure why that didn't work. Oh, am I using it wrong? pkill-u JS. There we go. Died. Okay. If we start that again and pass a user that doesn't exist, for example, it doesn't do that. So more filtering, very cool. Thanks for adding that, Tim. Then the same thing we have for mkdir also works for removedir. So rmdir tells us it removed those two directories. Again, useful for debugging. The next one I really find very interesting, which is unzip, supports -l now, which means you can list a zip file, the contents of a zip file, without actually unzipping it. So if you just want to take a peek inside, you just say -l. I think we have one in documents, zip archive, and it tells you there's a text file in there, there's a PNG in there. They were created at blah, 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 and they have a size of this. But the file didn't actually get extracted for that, not even to /temp. Or maybe it did. No, probably not. I should be able to work that out without unzipping. And that was added by Remain, so thank you for that. And we're coming to an end here. 3 more from Tim, and then it's done. Usermod. If you're creating users, because this is a multi-user operating system, so you might want to do that, you can now specify -r to remove a group and -a to add a group. So let's check. The one we created earlier was bar, and test I created earlier before. So if we usermod and then -g passing test -r, the user, which is anon, and the test group is gone. And we can add it back, hopefully, using -a. And there it is. So this is similar to the add group command that we looked at earlier, but using usermod. So if you're more familiar with that, that's what you might want to use. And then last but not least, a new flag for WC, which I believe is word count. It now supports uppercase L, which tells you what is the longest line in a file. we have a file called lynx. So this one is the longest, and let's see how much that is. It is 11 characters. I'm sure there's an option to tell you what the line actually is, but I'm not sure about that. Anyway, that's all I had to show you for today. There's even more changes, some of which I didn't show you, but really great work by Tim, obviously, and a bunch of other people hacking on the utilities, making them more useful for everyone, more POSIX compliant, which is also really helpful for like self-hosting and stuff, where compiling big projects might invoke complicated shell scripts that sort of assume that certain flags just exist. Actually, there's one last command that I can't really showcase, but still wanted to mention because it has a weirdly funny real-life use. So Linus Groh added a command called pixelflut. And that's a very simple protocol that allows sending an image to a pixelflut server. You just give it an image and some coordinates, and then a bunch of people can, at the same time over network, write to that same server, and then it outputs that on some display. With the caveat that other people might outperform you. So you have to have a good connection, a performant operating system, a performant network stack, and maybe multiple devices writing at the same time. And if you can manage to do that, you can bring a Serenity logo on the screen, like here at GPN, a conference that happened earlier this month in Germany, featuring the SerenityOS logo here. And now I'm not certain if this was actually written using this specific client, but I'm somewhat sure because it got written for this specific purpose. So that's really awesome. Not many people might need this, but it's still very cool. So I wanted to mention it. And that's all.
Okay, well, thank you, Linus. Now, one last thing that I forgot about yesterday also is I wanted to demonstrate sound support in Ladybird. And I was going to show it on Linux yesterday, but I can also show it on SerenityOS, of course. So let me open up a song here on my girlfriend's Bandcamp page. And we are going to try to play the audio from Bandcamp. This is using an audio element, and let's see if it actually loads. It's looking like it will, and we should be hearing it. That it actually works. How cool is that? And I think we can even scroll the page and it plays not super stably while we scroll, because we are actually in single processor mode here, so the browser does get very busy when we're doing this. But yeah, there you have it. Sound playback with the audio element on the web with Ladybird. Very, very cool. And that's all the things that we had to show you today. So thank you so much for stopping by and keeping up to date with the project. Of course, a big thank you to Linus for coming back to co-host once again. If you want to come chat, you'll find all of us in the SerenityOS Discord server, so link to that in the video description. And if you would like to sponsor development, you'll find links for that in the description as well. All right, that's it for today. I'll see you all next time. Bye.